Booze Cruise is the 11th episode of the second season of The Office. This is directed by Ken Kwapis, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And this was quite a roller coaster. I got really emotional at one point, and considering I wasn't even sure if I'd make it to season 2 of The Office, this is not where I thought I'd be at this point. And the specific events of the episode are not necessarily that interesting, but the emotions definitely are. So as I said, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And while I do think it's probably one of the most emotional episodes, we obviously have some comedy. It starts off very funny with Dwight realising Jim has put all of his belongings, including his wallet, in the vending machine. Not a bad way to start things off. Michael then reveals that the company trip is a booze cruise. Absolutely worst nightmare for me. On a boat with a lot of drunk people, I'd rather not. And honestly, nobody's really excited about this. Brenda from corporate is part of this conversation. I feel like that character didn't really serve any purpose. I don't know if she comes into it later on and she serves a bigger purpose and this was just a way of introducing her. But if not, that character really didn't need to be there. But nevertheless, Michael is excited about this leadership. There are quite a lot of puns in this, which I had good fun with. And the rest of the episode is on the boat. And Michael doesn't get on well with the ship's actual captain because Michael wants to be the one in charge. And we had some fun with that. I certainly didn't mind that. And I did like the character of the captain. Pam has brought Roy along. And obviously Roy working in the warehouse, that makes sense. But Jim has brought Katy along, and I don't know if it's an American thing or if it's the companies I've worked for, but to bring along your spouses, partners to a company work event seems a little bit strange for me, particularly if it's just on a cruise. It's not like they're travelling many miles away and are away for weeks at a time. I don't know. I thought it was strange, but maybe it's just based on my experiences. The party then gets started and the atmosphere gets a bit more lively, and it makes me feel very anxious because I wouldn't want to be in that situation. They're playing limbo, people are drinking, but we have a nice quiet moment up on the deck with just Pam and Jim, and Pam says, "Sometimes I just don't get Roy." And I like the fact that Jim didn't say anything to that. He didn't respond. He could have really provoked the conversation and really teased out of Pam all of the negative things about Roy. But he just let her pick up the conversation a bit more. But unfortunately, she doesn't really know what else to say. So it is a bit awkward. And then she declares that she's cold and goes back indoors. And then we have a moment between Katy and Pam, where Katy says she would really like to be engaged. How did Pam manage to pull it off? Which seems like kind of a rude thing to say. And Pam replies, "I've been engaged for 3 years and there's no end in sight, so you don't want to ask me for advice." Clearly Pam is not in the best headspace, and who can blame her? But then things turn around, and Roy gets on the microphone. Obviously it's a very loud atmosphere. He needs to go on the mic to talk over everybody, and says, "Let's set a date for the wedding, June 10th. And Pam's really excited about this. Is Pam genuinely excited, or is she just relieved? Does she really want to marry Roy? I have a lot of questions. And Jim decides to break up with Katy. I will say, I think Jim is brilliant, but he was very cold the way he spoke with Katy. He's clearly hurting. His heart is clearly sore. But that doesn't excuse the very cold and callous way he just decided to end things with Katy. Also, breaking up with somebody while you've brought them along to a company event on a boat where they can't get, that she can't leave. It's maybe not the best situation. So Jim's behaviour there wasn't the best, but it does give us an indication of how he's feeling. And we'll come back to that in a second, but first of all, Michael decides that nobody's paying attention to him, things aren't going his way, everybody's interested in the captain. So when the captain is out of the room, Michael decides to declare the boat is sinking. And obviously, everybody panics. People jump overboard. It's absolute chaos. And thankfully, the actual captain, comes back pretty quickly, but it was crazy. And also one of my worst nightmares. And then we have the final scene. We end with comedy, and I will share that line in a moment. I thought it was a nice way to end things. But it's a pretty powerful final scene, and it's very beautifully shot. We have Michael and Jim up on deck looking out at the water. It's obviously nighttime. It's beautifully lit. It's really gorgeous. And Jim says to Michael, "To tell you the truth, I used to have a big thing for Pam." The use of the word used to, or the phrase used to there, is quite interesting. I don't think for a second that Jim thinks it's in the past. Is he saying used to kind of is he trying to protect himself from his own feelings? I would guess that that's what's going on there. And Michael gets a chance to be motivational, which is what he wanted to do this entire event. And he tells Jim to not give up. And he does kind of suggest she's only engaged, not married. It's not official. Maybe not the most morally sound advice. But it seemed like in that moment, Jim was hurting because it was over. They were going to get married. He stood no chance. But Michael told him, keep going. And I'm very, very interested to see what's going to happen next. And I got emotional a couple of points. I got emotional when it was just Pam and Jim on the deck. And then again at that point. And then we get some comedy where Dwight has been given the job of steering the boat by the captain, because basically Dwight was getting in the way. And Dwight thinks it's actually steering the boat. He's actually steering it. And we end with Michael saying to Dwight, "It's a fake wheel, dummy." And that's how we end things. So it is a very funny episode at certain points. But for me, it's definitely one of the most emotional episodes. I'm very, very keen to see what happens next. And for now, all I can say is I really enjoyed Booze Cruise. The specifics of the episode, as in the activities on the cruise itself, maybe didn't interest me. But everything else was pretty great. And I'm really looking forward to the next episode.